Good morning and welcome to our Live Talk program. This is Lloyd Grubb here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our Live Talk program, covering current events on this year, Thursday. And today I'm looking at the topic, be aware of the British divide and conquer when helping others. Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for your word in this day. I pray, the Lord, that you may bless us as we study together. May your grace go with us, we pray. I pray for Christ's sake. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic, which is be aware of the British divide and conquer when helping others. So this principle here is normally enumerated, which is divide and conquer or divide and rule. And so I will be talking about this divide and rule in context or backdrop to this idea here of how the world works, and when you're helping others, that you have to be aware of this principle, because when a person is tainted with these philosophies that are brought to them by colonialists, then you have to be careful as you work with people, because they have these things embedded in their head, and it'd be difficult to deal with them even when you're trying to help, because they have these type of notions in their mind that keep them separated and keep them that you can't even help a person. So I'll clarify more as I go on. So my theme has been for this week, one of the biggest blessings I receive from the health message and trying to help others to heal and increase their health. I was a primary recipient of all the health and healing effort. So one of the things that you hear me talking here is so valuable to me, because as I peruse these topics, what it is that these are the experiences I've had over the years. And even with health, I've learned these concepts here, that when you're trying to help others, you always have to be dealing with side issues that has nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish. But people have these kind of principles in their mind that cause them to be divided amongst themselves. And then you cannot even bless them. I'll clarify more. So notice here, we identify with the least of these, we support the least of these, and we are the least of these. But even as we're least of these, we have concepts and principles that are affecting us, that we can't even work with each other and work with others. And yet you want to work with somebody, but if you're not aware that in their mind they have these principles or these thoughts in their mind that were given to them, especially those people who are colonized, so that they can't work together, because they constantly look at divisions or look at where the ways they're different from somebody, or the ways why they shouldn't work with another person, or have somebody work with them, that even if they're in need. So in Isaiah chapter 58, verse 6 through 8, it says, "Is not this the fast that I've chosen, to loose the band of wickedness, and to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out of thy house? And when thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward." So here, this text that I've read this week. So I've been reading this week. So this text here is interesting, because when you deal with this idea here that you need to help those that are hungry, those that are homeless, those that are naked, and those that are naked and cover them. How do you do this in an environment where even to help others, people are suspicious of you, because they have concepts in their mind of probably why you're trying to help them, which could be perfectly justified, and they have reason why you shouldn't help them. In other words, like if I preach the gospel, over the years I've learned that it's difficult to preach to others that are not of my own, because there's a suspicion that could be true or not. So over the years, I've had to find that out. What's the problem? Because I might be trying to preach to somebody. I'm trying to preach to somebody or trying to help somebody with health, and they have an issue, and they broadside me with an issue that I've never thought about. So then I had to learn this principle about divide and conquer, or divide and rule. And I say it is a British principle because I'm only familiar with Britain. Speak English, coming from, live in Jamaica, grew up in Jamaica, lived in Britain a little bit, and then live in America. So I'm always in a British system. So I'm not sure if other nations like China or Russia or any other nation that were never colonized, they have this principle. But I've noticed that when you deal with colonized people, that they're very much into these philosophies that separate us. Society is always segmented amongst different issues. So there's red state, blue state, there's conservative liberals, and so forth, and they fight against each other. But then when you realize it's a product of the British system. Now somebody say, isn't it Roman or is it French? Well, Western Europe, that's how they do their conquering. So I'll do some information about it in a second. So to help somebody now, I'd realized I had to learn the hard way that you cannot help, you can't bless, you can't minister, preach to somebody unless you first address this issue. And this has been something that I had to painfully come to realize, because in their mind there's that bug, and they look at life as black and white, conservative, liberal, red state, blue state, tall, short, male, female, so forth and so on. And society segment themselves or separate themselves. So if you're not part of them, it's hard to help them. So I realize I have to address this thing. You see more as I go on, or you judge more. I'll valid what I'm saying. So notice here, Luke chapter 4, verse 17 through 19. And it says, there was delivered unto him the book of Isaiah the prophet Isaiah. And when he had opened the book, he found the place where it was written, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he had anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. And he had sent me to heal the brokenhearted, and to preach deliverance to the captive and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty them that are bruised, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. So this, again, is important. So Christ goes to Isaiah, and he says this is what he has to do. But even as he went around doing his ministry, you realize this became part of a problem, because he's doing his ministry, but as he did ministry, he had to deal with the Sadducees, which were liberal. He had to deal with the Pharisees, which were conservative. And so today we see a segment of society all fighting against each other. They have a country to run, but it seems like it's more an attack or fight against the two groups. It's in church and in politics. So I didn't really see this when I was young. I didn't understand this when I was young. I didn't fully get it when I was in, say, Britain. But when I came to America, it started to become clear to me that the church is segmented between liberals and conservatives. And then the society, the political people are separated between liberals and conservative. And then it seemed like they would say the red states are the conservative states, and the blue states are the liberal states. And then like California would be a liberal, and then Mississippi would be a conservative. So my thing then, I would just try to understand what is this, and they fight against each other, even at the hurt of even at the hurt of the society that they live, because the society could be held back because they're fighting. So it made me curious, what is this? And the more I studied it, I understand it, I said, oh, I see how they do the business. And then I had to start looking, where did this come from? Because I realized in church it's hard to do church, because you run into people and you go to a church and it says it's a liberal church, and you go to a church and it says it's a conservative church, and then you investigate and you realize it's all nonsense. No such thing. It's just people just trying to find ways, wedge issue as they call it, to fight against each other. So now you come to the person and you say, Christ said to preach the gospel to the poor. Why couldn't he preach to the rich also? Don't they need the gospel? And you realize you can't preach to the rich because they're in a different category for other reasons. So Christ was just basically not saying, Christ separated out. He's just saying, I come to the sick. So if the rich is sick, I'll preach to them. If the poor is sick, I'll preach to them. If the conservative is sick, I preach to them. So how to get to that point has been one of my headaches. It's like trying to figure, okay, if somebody's brokenhearted and say is black and white, how do I preach to, I'm a black person, how do I preach to a white person and bless them with the gospel? Because I'm not supposed to, because That's how the society is structured, even if I can benefit the person. So that's where the problem comes in. So if what happens if I want to help somebody who is poor, who is naked, who need healing, who need problems with their bruise, so they have depression problems. How do I help a person if the person now, I'm black and the person is white, because I realize the society doesn't allow that. And the person who says white can't receive me because even if I can benefit them because I'm not the right person. Or if I'm conservative and the person is liberal, how do I help that person? Because we live, this is the air that we breathe. We breathe in an air that is that British system where the people have this kind of mindset in their head and they can't help each other. So the same would be if I'm Pakistani and I'm Muslim and somebody's Indian and they're Hindu, can I bless that person if I'm on whichever side I'm on? Because they're supposed to be my enemy. But where did this come from? And you start realizing, oh, this is the British system. And they do it all over the world. So people could see their brother in need and can't help their brother because they're not brothers, they're enemies. And so these are the things that you have to look at. In the Muslim world, it would be Sunni and Shia. And so you can't help each other because, no, a Sunni don't help a Shia and a Shia don't help a Sunni, because they're two different groups. And then who created that system was there, but who exacerbated the problem? Well, the British. And so this lay at the feet of the British. So we live, although in America we live in a British system, we're amongst British people. They're the dominant group that came over from Europe. But the French do it also, and so forth. I know too much of the Germans do it. You'd have to tell me, or the Italians. I would think the Italians would be the master of all of this. But you tell me. Of trying to do research to find out where this come from. But I think they lay it at the feet of the British. Read something for you in a second. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 28. Proverbs 16, verse 28 through 30. It says, a froward man, that's a person that's difficult to deal with. Right? So when people are difficult to deal with, they do these things. So a froward man soweth strife and whispereth, and a whisperer separated chief friends. So this is important. So when we think about almost all the major nations on the planet, they have these, what they call these secret society in their government called the secret agencies. I don't know what you call them. Secret agencies, they call them that. So the Russians would have the KGB, and they call them intelligence agencies. So Central Intelligence Agency. So all the intelligence come there. But so you have the CIA, KGB, the Mossad, so forth and so on. So after a while, you start realizing some of it is not really intelligence. Some of it is in verse 28, that a major part of it is not intelligence gathering, but it's how to thwart people and how to make people fight against each other, to put out propaganda, their propaganda machine. But the propaganda is in this concept. So they are the primary source of the British concept of divide and conquer. They just professionalize this idea. So in other words, what the Bible says here, they've made it a part of the government. So when they deal with KGB, Mossad, whatever, you realize a big part of what they do is to confuse people and to make people start fighting against each other. So it'd be like me and you, we're friends, and then somebody come to you or come to me and whisper in my ears. And next thing you know, I have a beef, so to speak, a fight with my friend. But then I never think about it. I say, wait a minute, but, the person whispering in my ear is a problem. No, what the person said to me. There's probably something that me and my friend, we don't fully agree upon. We don't agree upon. We don't agree upon. We're friends, but we have something that we disagree with. And then the whisperer comes and find out what it is, and then start to rib me and start to say things to me. And next, me and my friend start having arguments over the same thing. But I'm not focused that the problem is the whisperer. What the problem is, I'm thinking, is my friend. And next, me and my friend start fighting and stuff like that. And you say, who does this in the society? Well, this is originally for me. I know it from the British, so somebody could tell me it's the Italians or whoever, but Western Europe does this. This is their masterwork. They'll whisper something to my wife, and next thing me and my wife fighting. And this is how they divide and conquer. more in a little bit. So notice here, so the forward man saw it strive. So this is purpose. The person is going in, so it strive. So we can say the forward people in our society are the people who work for the intelligence agencies. And a whisperer separated chief friends. So if you look at it, you see this is current events. This is probably one of the powerful, most current events happening. Because when you start get what's going on, say, in Russia, what's made that fascinating is that you realize they're Slavic people. And you know that the Germans, for years, if you go back to, you go and have time and look at it, when some of these laws came into place in Germany, in about 1887 or so, or 1886, in the 1880s, they start coming up with rules against that anybody Slavic and Jews couldn't own land. And this was when they talk about like the Nuremberg codes and the codes where Adolf Hitler put in place. Because you probably hear me say it here before that a lot of whatever caused World War I and World War II was happening at the time in the 1880s, and this was part of what Ellen G. White was seeing would have ended up in why she wrote that book, The Great Controversy, because the issues at play, white superiority, who's, blonde hair, blue eye, these rules were coming up in the 1800s, 1880s. Anyhow, so, and then it gave us almost wars in World War in 1800s, and it gave us war in the early 1900s, 1917, and it gave us 1930s to 40s, World War, what they call II, which was World War I, World War II, 1800s, were fights amongst themselves, Western Europe fighting against themselves. But they call it the World War. I don't know why they call it the World War, because they're warring amongst themselves, right? So when you look at the Ukrainians and the Russians are Slavic. Even the whole concept of Russia is from a town. The name of it is from a town. From what I'm understanding, you can always correct me on anything I say here, because I'm more familiar with Britain, America, and Jamaica. But Ukraine, Rush, is where you get the word Russian. And then even the head of the Russian church, the Russian Orthodox Church, was headquarters in Ukraine. And they're Slavic people, but they're different. Russians and Ukrainians, they speak different language, but a lot of people in Ukraine speak Russian. And so what you have two brothers that are looked at as Slavic that are fighting against each other. But who are the pushers of it? Well, if you look at Ukraine, you find that Ukraine is filled with, Kiev especially, is filled with a lot of Nazis. And you can go back in the archive and find all this documentation. You will see it filled with Nazis, but Nazis is more connected to German, which is white superiority. So you can see how they divide brethren. So if you look at that war, you're thinking, who put that war together? I'll give you one last example. When you think about the war with Hamas or the Palestinian and the Israel, who created that entity? Again, it's the British. A lot of what you see in this world today with this divide and conquer, it's totally Western, totally British. Are these problems, were they there before? You're going to see, I'm going to read for you in a second from Wikipedia, this Wikipedia entry, that the problems were always there, but the British know how to use a problem to destroy a people. Whatever divides a group of people, they'll use it. They say, okay, there's a difference between them. Let's exacerbate that difference, and then now let's conquer or rule. So a forward man saw it strive, and a whisperer separated chief friends. Your best friend will start fighting with you when they get to your friend. Notice here, a violent man enticed his neighbor and leaded him into the way that is not good. So violent man is either somebody is stoking the fire. So we have to know who's stoking the fire. You go into a church and that's why the church is almost emptied out. Almost all churches are emptied out. Anywhere there's social, anybody that has this principle, they won't go to church. If you go to church, you go to Western church. For somebody outside of America, listen to me. This might not make a lot of sense to you unless you live in colonized nations, especially that were British. But if you go to churches like in North America, it's always like white Americans is hard to find. Why? Because they're the ones that are affected the most with this principle, and they fight amongst themselves. This is why they have culture wars. If you go to Argentina, anywhere, why they're doing culture wars? Because the society is segmented, and they're constantly thinking about why you're different, not what makes us the same. So now you go to a church now, it's difficult to do church with Westerners and colonized people because they constantly think about why you're different. And I'll give you an example before I keep going. So years back, I had a person that was close follower of mine. And the person had a difficulty belonging to my church because the person who is Black American said, well, you don't have enough Black American represented in your church. So I said, really? And I was shocked by it. I was broadsided because this is somebody I'm very close to. But the person had a problem. And then the person said, well, I'm going to have to join a different... And when the person went and joined a Black American church, that had more Black Americans. So what it is I had to learn some hard lessons, how important this is for people. Because it's, well, even though, as I said to people who are Black American, one person I remember saying this to, I didn't say to people, one person, I said the same ship that dropped me off in Jamaica, drop you off in Louisiana or Alabama or Mississippi. You know, but the person think, well, it's a different ship or you came to a different place, but I don't understand the difference. What's the difference? You know, we all came over by the same ship. Either it was a Pinta Nina or Santa Maria, or it was the Henry Morgan or whoever brought us over. So, or the person that wrote the book, the song, The Amazing Grace, probably was him. But it doesn't matter. You see, but people get into this thinking, well, we're different. It's always kind of, colonized people constantly look at how we're different. And let's see if we can segment and separate, even though we all need the same help. But that's our current events. So notice here, a violent man enticed his neighbor and leaded him into the way that is not good. He shutted his eyes to devise froward things. Moving his lips, he bringeth evil to pass. So this is what it is. The person is constantly thinking, how can they divide them and separate them? And then these people fighting against each other, you're thinking, why are they fighting? Aren't they the same people? So I say this, though, that most people groups are tainted by these wedge issues and will reject you helping them or damage what you're trying to accomplish because these bugs, which I call them part of the wines of Babylon or wine of Babylon, is in their head. So most people groups, because they've been infected by colonization, is light skin, dark skin. You know, so when I was growing up in Jamaica, certain people had certain privilege because they were closer to white and they were light skin. And that slowly got eroded because Britain had pulled away for so many years. The longer they were pulled away from Jamaica, is the less these wedge issues become important. But when I was growing up, it was getting less and less important. You know, you only give certain privilege and certain jobs to people who are closer to the slave masters, in look at least. And so these are wedge issues because these bugs are in their head. The British were masters of dividing people. So all colonialists and the colonized are infected and must be carefully addressed. You know, so that's a note to myself. So all colonizers, that means those who are, say, white from the 7 kingdoms of Western Europe, they have this bug embedded in their head and they don't even know how much they're infected by it. So if you deal with someone that's white, they're very much infected by it. They just don't know. They live and breed, divide and conquer, wedge issue. This is why this is current events. You see, when I read the news, that's how I see the news. I just see the news in that way. You know, like if I see a fight in Kashmir or over Kashmir with the Pakistani and the Muslim and the Hindus, I saw, okay, that's the British gave them that. When I see how the lines were drawn on the map for certain countries, you look at the map of the Middle East, what they call the Middle East, like Lebanon, Syria, all the different countries, boom, that's your British drawing that map. It's draw for fight. You remember the Rwanda genocide? That was a British construct. That was a rebel against the British system. If you think about the Sunni was controlling the Shia, and the Shia was a larger majority. The smaller controlling the larger. And it was going to end bad. But then when America went there, they exacerbated. On and on we could go. And you can see how they work these politics. And somebody say, were these differences there? Yes. As a matter of fact, I say this lastly here, that before I read this piece from Wikipedia, that when one of the book I was reading about slavery in Jamaica, one of the things they did, there was slave masters. This is why I say it's a British system. The slave master from the 1800, they knew that they never tilt the balance of mixture of slaves from the same country on the same plantation because they know it would be dangerous because they could work together. So what they'll do, they make sure if you have a slave plantation and there's say 100 slaves, they'll make sure probably have 20 from Senegal, 20 from Kenya. I'm probably saying that right. Ghana, Ivory Coast, blah, 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 Cameroon, wherever they can find them, and then mix and match them. So they know that says they would be able to keep control of them because they'll fight against each other. And so it's easier to control them because the time instead of they working together with each other, they work against each other to keep each other down. So the slave master could control them and beat them and whip their buttocks that way. So this was how he did it. So so I'd start learning that I say, oh, this is important. So if I'm dealing with people who are colonized, they have that bug in their head. And so for them, it's not about how you can bless them. So somebody say, are we supposed to help the poor? Yes, but you have to be careful how you help the poor. Because when you deal with a poor person, you deal with a person suffering that need help. If for them, it'd be too much. If, as I say, how, that's the question that if you have an answer for me, tell me. How do you, if you're a black person, give charity and help to somebody that's in need as white? Because they're not supposed to. Because how do you a person have in their mind, because they're segmented in the concept of white superiority. So how does the superior take help from the inferior? It's preferably better for them to die. And I think that's their mindset. So over the years, I realized it's very difficult. I remember this thing I was doing a health seminar. And doing a health seminar at the church. And, I invite the community as I would. And the community came out. And some of the people, not the community, some people came. So there was a lady after I finished the seminar, I'm trying to wrap up stuff. And, we had some food to eat and sampling, as they would say. And there was a white lady that came, probably a little bit older than me, but closer to my age. And she said to me, I noticed there's a Jamaican connection here. And I said, Jamaican connection? But I was so busy with what I'm doing that I found the question fascinating. And I'm like, Jamaican connection? So there's Jamaican there. So I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. You see, in my mind, I'm just thinking I'm doing church and whoever is there. There's a reason why they did, but I didn't have an answer for it because I'm not thinking that way because, okay, they're Jamaican. But I didn't know what to answer. And I'm like, that's I was stumped and I couldn't answer because I guess, I don't know. They're Jamaicans here. But I realized there was actually 3 of us as male in the group that were Jamaicans. Never really thought about that. But one of the male was brought up here. And so he's like American, more so than Jamaican. But anyhow, over the years I've thought about it and I say, okay, yeah, there's a lot of Jamaican in the Adventist church. Just like probably they have a lot of Filipinos in the nursing. Somebody say, why there's so much Jamaican and Filipinos nurse? Because they have production. It's just part of it. It's not Filipinos are nurse. Why there's so much Indian doctors? And so forth. Chinese engineer. You don't know. Sometimes somebody could stump you with a question. You don't like, I don't understand. And then, but over the years, I've thought about it and I say, oh, Jamaica, I think, has one of the highest, if not the highest, per capita when it comes on to churches, I think, in the world. It's a high amount of churches per square mile. And then there's a lot of Adventists there for whatever reason. Then there's a lot of religion there, like Rastafarian. And so it's a kind of, even though there's so much entertainment that comes out of Jamaica and stuff like that, there's a lot of religion. Most people would know that if they didn't live there. And then like my wife was saying to me that, in Jamaica, you'll have an artist starts as a secular person, secular artist, and then he becomes religious later on in his career. They do the opposite. In America, you probably start religious and then end up secular. They'll do it the opposite because there's so much religion there. You just don't think about that. Whatever the reason, so like you can go to Jamaica and get, like vegetarian food because there's the Seventh Adventists there, big, and then the Rastafarians. So it's an environment that, religion is always put in songs and stuff like that. If you listen to Bob Marley, he's very religious and yet very secular at the same time, but very religious. So, but most people don't understand that a lot of his songs were songs of emancipation and religion. So Jamaicans kind of have a way of doing things, but then somebody be like, okay, but the person not telling, are you blessed? Are you there because you want to be blessed with health, or are you there because you worry that there's too much black guys here, or Jamaicans, or and these people think this way, and so after a while I have to realize, oh, I have to stop and pay attention to this, but I never used to because it didn't mean nothing to me, And I remember one Sabbath somebody sent me greetings, happy Sabbath from 3ABN. So I clicked the link, but then I went in the link, and if there was like, say, 8 or 10 comments, 4 of the comments had a Jamaican flag. So somebody would say, is 3ABN a Jamaican ministry? No, it's just all the Jamaicans are Adventists. And if you hear me talk here, unless you go to the culture, you wouldn't understand why I talk the way I talk, because I grew up in an environment where that's just how they talk. They talk against the Babylon system, and they talk against all this evil oppression. Like when I was young, to free, it was a major topic in Jamaica to free South Africa from the apartheid system. It was like you talk about it as if it's, like you're talking about the sun. Oh, the sun gonna rise today. No, we should free South Africa. But if you're not in that environment, you might thinking, oh, there's somebody. It might sound weird to say an American, because Americans don't talk about justice, and I would laugh about it. That I don't know if I've ever hear anybody protest about injustice in Texas, but I'm sure if it's time to kill people, the Texans will line up. But they're pew pew pew. It's the old Wild West down there. So that's what it is. But unless you live in the environment, you don't know what I'm talking about. So Wikipedia now have this article I want to read. Part of this article I want to read to you, just a little piece of it. And it's about divide and rule. Divide and rule, R-U-L-E, or divide and conquer, which is Latin for divide et impera. So divide and conquer, divide and rule, in politics refer to an entity gaining or maintaining political power by using divisive measures. This includes the exploitation of existing divisions within a political group or by its political opponents, and also the deliberate creation or strengthening of such divisions. So this is what you can notice. So the division could be already there. In other words, if I'm short and you're tall, there's a division. But divide and conquer will exacerbate or emphasize the fact that I'm short and you're tall, and that I shouldn't have somebody tall ruling over me. And I'm like, yeah. But I never thought about it until the person showed me that divide and then use it. But that's where the problem is. So according to Richard Murrock, 4 tactics of divide and rule practiced by Western colonialists are. So I skipped down some of the article because of the sake of time. So, but I go back to the first part before I go to the colonialists, because it's important for us to get this. Because as I say, when you deal with anybody in Western world, especially British English speaking, this concept is so embedded in their mind that I didn't know this at first, because, as I say, I first grew up in an area that was mostly black, in Jamaica, so I wouldn't have known this. But then I lived in Britain, and I'd probably see a little bit of it, I think. But then I came here and I realized it's massive here. You don't deal with Leroy because you don't love watermelon, but Leroy loves watermelon. Leroy is black and you're white, so the two shall not deal with each other because Leroy loves watermelon. And then, so black people love watermelon. Then I'm saying, okay, do I love watermelon? And I say, I don't really love watermelon. I can have one, but it's not something. I could go the whole summer. I think this summer probably had 1, 2, 0. I don't remember if I had a watermelon. My wife would have to tell me. You see, so it's not something I think about. I think about mangoes. So then if I eat a lot of mangoes, that means, is it black people love mangoes? You see, these are but you divide people along. So if you deal with somebody, you realize they have these bugs in their head, but you say, where did this come from? Well, according to Wikipedia and according to the world, according to what I've observed, it come from Britain, Western Europe, but it's Britain I single out mostly, because they're the masters of this. So you see 2 people fighting in Israel right now. But who's doing this? It's wedge issues. But they'll fight and kill each other over this. So I notice again, divide and conquer is a political refer to gaining, maintaining political power by using divisive measures. So for me, no matter, I'm not supposed to do a church where there's black Americans in the church. or there's Hispanics, or there's whites, or there's whatever, because I can't bless people unless they're mine. But I say, why? Oh, because they have this bug in their head, and it's like this. You know, if you like in India, I'm sure probably caste systems were there because India was conquered by, I think, Iran. So the light skinned Indians have to abuse the dark skinned Indians. So we deal with the Indian, unless you have a certain light skin, even if they're darker than me, skin wise, they it's difficult because they have this caste system where you have the Dalits, the untouchable, and they're the dark, poor. And then you have the Iranians where they're almost white. So you deal with a dark skin. That's why I think in American politics, it's hard for people to understand why Indians would not only be Republican, but we support some of the most racist principles, because that's the environment they grew up in India. Who gave them that? It's the British. Who exacerbated it is the British, because obviously there's dark-skinned Indian and there's light-skinned, more Iranian Indians. But who control who? Who use who against who? But so you deal with somebody dark-skinned and they're supporting principles that's horrifying. And you say, but aren't they almost emasculating themselves and denigrating themselves? You realize no, because they grew up in an environment where light is right. So this is part of its divide and rule, and you look at it, it makes it's literally was the, if you do the research, I did the research myself, it was the power on the slave plantations. And I had to learn all of this because I have to understand, okay, what do you do with people if you want to bless them? You can't. It makes it very difficult, very, very difficult, because again, it would be almost impossible for me to bless somebody that is not of my color, because in their mind, I'm not supposed to. You know, how am I going to bless somebody? How am I going to teach somebody that's superior to me? You see, that's how they think. So now it's such a difficult thing because you can't. You see, it's not, you know, like you go into church, it's the white church and the black church. And the two, so not supposed to meet. You know, I remember this prominent pastor, or well-known pastor, I shouldn't say prominent, but well-known pastor in America, he asked a question, is outside of California, Oregon, and Washington State, is there a church in America that is Adventist, that's a white church that's led by a black pastor? And it was crickets. Nobody came up with an answer that was reasonable. He said, probably this could happen in California, but does it happen outside of that? And you would think, no. I remember years ago, I was preaching to a group of people, and then this lady came to me and said, let me ask you this, Lloyd. Why is it that almost all present truth preachers are blacks? And I was stumped again. I was like, they are? I was like, wow, really? Because I didn't know. I never observed that. You see, never thought to observe that. And then over the years, I've tried to figure it out why. But I never thought about it. But if you were white and you were preaching, would you get a job in the system? That's fascinating. And why wouldn't the black preachers get a job in the black church if they're present truth? See, so in my mind, I just thought, if you're preaching certain preaching, the corporate church will never accept you. I never saw it as black or white. But then the question is, but why they're black? See, I still have the answer for that. I have suspect, but not something clear that I could say what. But it seemed like so many independent ministries, so many stuff, they're black. But there's some white ones, but you don't get it. It's very, very difficult. Or is it if you're in a certain mindset, you just can't be accepted in a system? So even the black system won't accept you. But this is what we're dealing with in America here. And so sometimes I'm stumped by these questions because I'm not thinking along racial line, but people force me to. Because if you hear me, you probably think, spend a lot of time with these things. Not when I was younger. It's when I start realizing that this is the environment we live in, and I was ignorant to it. And I needed to pay attention to it. And I started doing some research. And I realized, oh, that's how our society functions because of Britain. So this includes exploitation of existing division with a political group and by its political opponents. So this is why America fight against each other. This is why it's easier for China to come up. Why? Because they have one-party system. But in America, we have two-party, and they fight against each other at the hurt of the people. So notice here, according to Richard Murrock, 4 tactics of divide and rule practiced by Western colonialists. So this is important for me because, as I say, I am I am a result of Western colonization. Notice here, manufacture of differences within the target population. So they'll manufacture. This is official policy. They'll manufacture the difference. So even if the difference is not there, obviously they'll create a difference. So this is why, as I say, you'll have the house slaves would be light skin, and then the slaves in the field would be dark skin. So the facial feature, skin color, whatever. And so you have this manufactured. And you're like, this is not that important of an issue. And they're like, oh no, it's important. We'll kill each other for it. I'm like, no, it's not. So then I realized in church, because when I came up in church, it was liberal and conservative. And I've yet to find a conservative that is not liberal. If you can give me one example of a conservative that's not liberal, I'll give you $5. That's all I can give you. I have no money to give you. Notice here, the amplification of existing differences. So, like I remember one time I was preaching somewhere and this Black American lady came to me and said, man, it's difficult to understand you. And I said, why? She said, because your accent is so thick. And I'm like, I know I have an accent, but my accent is thick. You would think and I've white. It's obviously whites would have had a problem with me also, but my accent is thick. She says, and she emphasized the word thick, like it was even the word thick was thick when she said it, and I'm like, I was stumped. I couldn't really answer that because I could say, well, yeah, I have problems sometimes with Black American pastors. I can't understand what they're saying because the accent is so thick. But so I would just get stumped when people say that. I'm like, huh? So that person basically, if they're about to kill themselves, and because I preach a lot about mental health and how the mind works. Like this sermon is really about mental health and the diseases of the mind. She wouldn't listen closely because her life was dependent upon it because my accent is thick. See, but then so I'm just giving you examples that I'm showing. I'm not manufacturing things here. This is how the society works. You can't bless me because your accent is thick. You're from Jamaica. You came on the ship before they drop you off first before they drop me off. So you can't work with people because of that. So it's difficult. So unless you can deal with this issue, you can't work with people. So I've learned in the past, if I'm dealing with somebody, I have to talk like this because if a person don't deal with these issues, they will never work together. Notice here, the use of these differences for the benefit of the colonial empire. So the colonial empire used these differences. So when you look at Britain would segment every country and every island like this, no matter where they went. If it's Palestine, if it's amongst look at Syria, and there's the part of the port in Syria, one port area is a different group, and they just cut it off and they create a wedge. There's the Iraq and Sunni. And listen, I'm telling you right now, I could just call any war. I could say, and I could be right, and somebody could say, why would you call it? I'm not want to call these things, but I'm just saying, because as long as a group has a difference, I don't know, what is it, MI6, they call them in Britain, or CIA or whatever, they can exacerbate these things and cause wars. And you could have a war pop up that nobody would have predicted. I was like, yeah, they'll cause it because they just start to segment the people. It's communists against democracy, and you must attack and kill people because they're not democratic, they're communists. Notice here, they use the differences to benefit the colonial empire. They carry over of these differences into the post-colonial period. So these principles were carried over. So this is why, as they say, when you deal with somebody from this type of mindset, they still have these things in their head. And if you don't deal with it, like I realize, I can't help a person unless I talk to them and say, listen, I feel pain, you feel pain. I feel hunger, you feel hunger. I feel sad, you feel sad. We're all the same. We might have just a slight genetic differences, but we're the same. We might have difference in our bank account, but we're the same human being. We still have to eat the same food, and but it's difficult to get across people because they see, okay, no, but you're black and I'm white, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I guess. Notice here, foreign policy. So how do they operate this now with their foreign policy? So foreign policy, divide and rule, can be used by states to weaken enemies' military alliances. So notice before they have Russia and China against each other. They have real differences, but they fight against each other. As long as they fight against each other, they can't work with each other. And that's always good for the West. So I know right now, there's somebody at the desk right now in different, in any of these secret society agencies in the government that is working to try to rekindle the differences between Russia and China because it works good for America. And so when you start understanding, you understand, oh, that's it, they can't work together. Because peace won't have a chance because the whispers say, oh yeah, but this. And they're like, oh yeah, we need to fight. Or India is always fighting with China because there's border dispute. As long as they fight against each other, everything is good for the West. If they work together, it's a problem, you see. So you can have Iran, although they're Muslim, but one is Sunni and one is Shia, one is more liberal and one is more conservative. Make them fight against each other, good for the West. As long as they're fighting against each other, it's great. And so if you deal with someone like that, it's difficult to deal with them because imagine a Sunni can't help a Shia and a Shia can't help a Sunni because the two of them together. Notice, Saudi Arabia has to be fighting against Iran because Saudi Arabia is against Iran, it's against Yemen, but who supports Saudi Arabia to fight against those countries? It's America and Britain. When there was talk about current events, when there was a agreement by Turkey that Ukraine and Russia should settle their differences, Britain came in, Boris Johnson, that's the official statement from various different sources that Boris Johnson came in, which he's the master of this because he's British, and he made sure put a wedge and said, no, go to war. And you two of them fighting, and probably 1 million people later, or 500,000 people dead. But the British are there again. And you could see this over and over again. You say, oh, the Boris Johnson is doing a good job because we have to stand and fight, brethren. But there's two Slavic people fighting against each other. And that's your current events. When you read the news, that's what you're reading. But most people read the news and they see something in the news and they don't understand. No. That's them British people. They're master of dividing people. And so that's the system that we're under. And so you can't work with somebody that you're supposed to bless or make peace with because the British will just come in and say, no, don't do that. Let's go to war. And then notice again, Hamas and stuff did what it is. But Hamas was under oppression for so many years by Israel. But who's supporting Hamas? It's Western Europe and, Hamas, Israel, Western Europe and America. Now notice who is negotiating for peace. This is ridiculous. Who is negotiating for peace is America, and it's a Jewish American representative. Now, the person that is a foreign minister for America always is the one negotiating, but he's Jewish. And he's negotiating with Hamas. Who does he represent? You don't even know. And notice there's never any peace because you can't negotiate with somebody that in their mind they're using wedge issues because they're there to cause hostility. But that's our current events. But most people read the news and they're not getting this. So I had to learn this the hard way in church. I'm just telling you, and amongst the society. Notice here, this usually happens. So how they do this wedge issue? This usually happens when propaganda or disinformation are disseminated within the enemy states in an attempt to raise doubts about the alliance. Oh, we need to be suspicious. I need to be suspicious of my friend. But me and my friend, we never have no suspicion amongst each other. We know what we agree with and we know what we disagree with. But now you start whisper. And all of a sudden, I'm suspect my friend. Suspicion was never there. So you have to know who does this. So that's when they talk about infiltrating a group. That's what that is. Oh, the elections were fraudulent. Probably they were, but if it come from Western media, this is propaganda to destroy a group of people. And next they start fighting, full of war, people dying. Where does this come from? You find the original source. That's the good thing about electronic media, because a lot of what I'm saying here now is definitely provable with electronic media. It used to be proven with print media. But now they prove it definitely with electronic media. You can see who originally posted this and it started to be shared. In the past, I remember I listened to a program and they were saying that Voice of America, which is the major radio propaganda arm and video propaganda arm of the CIA, they had banned it from being played in America because they didn't want to confuse Americans. But now it's played in America, so that means most of propaganda now is being played in America. So Americans talking about culture wars. That's foolishness, culture wars, And you say, why is the culture war? Oh, it's against the LGBTQIA plus people, the rapists and stuff like that. So, okay. And who are these people? Oh, the same senators and Congress people. They're all coming out of the closet. So who they fighting against? They're fighting against themselves. I know a person who is a conservative person who did a TV program on Fox News. And if you read his bio, he says that he's a traditionalist. I've listened to interviews where he says he's a traditionalist. He's a traditionalist Catholic. But yet he's been accused and settled with two black men. He's not black, he's white, but he settled with two black men for sexual assaulting them. They claim, and that's the official claim. I don't even have to say allegedly, literally. He settled with them. Now they just falsely accuse him, but isn't this person a conservative? So I'm saying, what is a conservative? I've never met a conservative. What debugged me of this is that I came up in America in conservative churches. So I meet conservative. And I dealt with a lot of conservative white male. But when I started hearing their stories and the stories of their children, privately, they'll tell me, I'll say, but you're not conservative. You might be a preservative, but you're not conservative. Like, what is conservative about you? You show me a conservative. Somebody will say, oh, but this person's a conservative. Really? Probably, rarely, you meet somebody that's a conservative, right? I know people who are liberal that's more conservative than conservative. You're talking about conservative. I went to the news this morning, talk about current events. I went to the news this morning, talk about these conservatives. And they're saying they have 3 different headlines with 3 different people in the Trump administration. You go on USA Today right now, you can see it, that are all accused of being rapists. These were the same men 50 years ago or so, 60 years ago, would be lynching black men for rape. But who was doing the rape? And you look at all these black people who are light-skinned. How did they get light-skinned? No, they have a black mother and they come out light-skinned. But the same men will say, oh no, we conservative. Conservative how? A place, conservatives, where there's so many people jumping out of the closet, elders turn up at church in dress, and then they tell me they're fighting culture wars. You're pro-traditional family, but you're being accused of sexually assaulting black men. I don't get that. You see, this is what we've seen over the years. You think about the most conservative states. You remember Jerry Springer? I remember when I came to America and I saw that circus, and I was like, is this real? These people live like this? This was like weird behavior. But yet these people tell me West Virginia and Tennessee and Alabama, Mississippi and North Carolina, South Carolina, South Dakota, all these states are conservatives. And I'm like, in what planet of the earth? They're preservatives are for something, but not conservatives. If somebody could ever prove to me a conservative, I've met all of them, and rarely. Once the alliance is weakened or dissolved, a vacuum will allow the hostile state to achieve military dominance. So divide and conquer now in the United States. This is the same article from Wikipedia. If you just type in divide and rule, your article will come up, or divide and conquer. And you can read the whole article for yourself. Not a long article. I just took some part of it. Divide and conquer strategy is similar to the notion of wedge strategy. So it's a wedge. You're creating a wedge amongst 2 people so they can't deal with each other and they fight against each other. So this is important for me because, as I say, I realize no matter if I'm trying to teach somebody health, I'm trying to do something positive for the person, it's difficult inside of the United States or when you deal with colonized people, because they'll be like, no, you can't do that for me. Why? Oh, because you're different from me. And I'm like, wow, this is very difficult to do ministry and to bless people in America because they're different. Somebody could be suicidal as they can, but no, you can't help me. One thing I remember learning, and I've preached it here, that you should take love from whoever give you the love. But there's some people, if it's a black person or a Hispanic person, think about it, Mexicans are rapists, but all these conservative men that are going to evict Mexicans and illegals out of their country, they're being accused of sexual assault and rape and stuff like that, and being charged for rape. And this life is weird. Let me tell you something. What I believe is this life here, with them wickedness that people do, it always backfire on them, and then you find out, oh, they're the rapists. So notice in the United States, some analysts assert that the United States is practicing the strategy in the 21st century Middle East through their supposed escalation of the Sunni Shia conflict. British journalist Nafiz Ahmed, which is Muslim journalist, that's what you say, you couldn't say that, he's not British, cited in 2008 RAND, capital RAND Corporation study for the U.S. Armed Forces, which recommend divide and rule, quotation, as a possible strategy against the Muslim world in the long war. So the RAND Corporation, a think tank, came up with this doctrine that they look at as a strategy. So this is official I'm talking about. So if somebody hear me talking and saying, oh Lord, you don't listen, I don't make up nothing. I never preach makeup stuff. I do my research. Go read the article yourself and go find a RAND article. So you deal with a US military person. They teach in the US military, in order for you to conquer the Middle East, what you need to do is exacerbate their divide and use the Muslim issue of Sunni Shia against them. Official, divide them and rule them. And they plan for a long war. Did they tell the American public this? Right? You see what I'm saying? So this is what's going on. So you find these people fighting against each other, killing each other, bombing each other. And then you find that an American came up with this thing. Let's use this British concept of divide and rule, which was first in literature, the 1600s. And it was a French complaint that the British was using it against them. So the British been using this principle even against France. So when slavery happened, the British figured out, oh, let's use it against the slaves. So this is a principle. So you deal with somebody now. It's almost, to me, I have to realize, I have to talk with the person and say, listen, I understand. I am what I am. I didn't choose where I'm born. I didn't choose the language I speak. I didn't choose that I'm male or black or whatever. This is how it happened. It just happened. I say, I have some tools. I have some things that I can do for you, teach you, whatever. Could you allow me to teach you? And just ignore the fact that I'm black and I'm male. I'm from Jamaica. I might lean conservative, so forth and so on. Because you can't. If you don't address this in America, you can't do ministry. You can't help people. Because I realize I can't preach to a black American because I'm Jamaican, or a white person because there's a black Jamaican connection. And this is so bad in the country. Think about it. Some of the most poor states are conservatives and red. So I was impressed when Obama tried to address the drug epidemic in West Virginia. Because I'm like, you're not supposed to allow a black person to try to help West Virginians because they're white and superior. And they're Republican. You see, this is, can't help people like this. Not supposed to. But Christ said we're supposed to love our fellow human being. But the British make it that you can't even love somebody that's different from you. The Samaritan should not never help the Jew that fall amongst thieves. In Jude 1:21 through 23, it says, keep yourself in love, looking for the mercy of our Lord Jesus Christ unto eternal life. And some have compassion, making a difference, and others save with fear, pulling them out of the fire, hating even the garment spotted by the flesh. So he's saying that says, even in ministry, you have to be careful of how you deal with people, because somebody will attack you over things and you're just really trying to help them because they're stained by sin. And this is one of the sins that is destroying our society and destroying us from helping each other. In Romans 16, verse 17 and 18, it says, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause division. So you have to mark them. I'm doing what the Bible says. Who caused division? Mark them, the British. They have caused a lot of division in the world. A lot of the bloodbath is on those people's hand. Mark them that have division and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speech deceive the heart of the simple. So I was simple once, and I was stumped over and over again. People say this and say that, and I'm like, I couldn't answer them because I don't know what they're talking about. I'm just trying to preach some word or trying to help somebody and realize, oh, you're not supposed to do that. We don't like your kind around here. I've been told, you need to leave. And I was like, really? Why? Oh, because I'm black? And so I had to learn division, but it is in a colonizer mindset. So it doesn't matter if you deal with Hindu, Muslim,
Light and dark skinned people, like in in Rwanda, it would be the same thing. British again. Red state, blue state, British again. Liberal, conservative, what? I've yet to meet, almost never meet a conservative. Black, white, Sunni, Shia, Ukraine, Russian, Slavic people fighting against each other. Hamas fighting against Palestine. Who created that? British and America, supported by France and Germany. They create these division amongst us. And until we deal with these things and recognize the fact that we're all in the same boat, we're all in need of Jesus, we all in need of help, but we should take the help from wherever we get. We'll never be able to move forward as people because we're constantly looking at differences with each other and can't just really work together and understand and say, listen, you're in need of prayer and I'm in the need of prayer. What I have to do with skin color or, money in the bank or stuff like that. Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for your word, and I pray, dear Lord, that we might love each other as brethren and truly look out for the salvation of all men. This is my prayer in Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live tomorrow where we should talk about religion. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.